Get ready for a deep dive into the world of British lit. We're going to go on this whirlwind tour through like centuries of incredible writers and their work.
It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, we've got a really cool quiz by Dr. Jesvant Rathord kind of guiding us along the way.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, we're going to use that.
It's a really unique approach.
Yeah.
It lets us see these authors in a different light.
Yeah, and instead of just like, listing out names and dates, we're going to try and pull out the juicy bits, right?
Absolutely.
Like those aha moments that make you go, wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, those little surprising connections.
Yeah, exactly.
And how literary thought develops over time.
Yeah, it should be fun. So let's dive in. Okay, so picture this. It's the 18th century.
Yeah.
The era of powdered wigs and witty comebacks. Everybody's obsessed with reason and logic.
Right.
It's the age of enlightenment. And writers were all about like dissecting human nature, all of our like flaws and quirks and everything in between.
It's fascinating how this emphasis on reason just completely shaped their writing.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of getting swept away by emotions, they're using satire and wit to expose society's follies.
Totally.
Really holding up a mirror to human behavior.
Yeah. And they did it with such style.
Yes.
These poets were masters of the heroic couplet, which,
yes,
you could think of as like the power suit of poetry.
Okay.
These perfectly balanced lines, often rhyming in pairs. And it just creates this sense of elegance and control, which is perfect for delivering those sharp, witty observations.
Yes, and Alexander Pope is a brilliant example of this satirical spirit.
Oh, totally.
His poems are like verbal fencing matches.
Yes.
Using wit and wordplay to expose hypocrisy and just poke fun at all those social conventions.
Yeah.
It's like the 18th century version of a stand-up comedy routine, but in rhyme.
I love that analogy.
Yes.
It just like brings those old poems to life.
It does.
And so while these poets were, busy dissecting human nature, they also had a particular way of looking at the world around them. And so when they talked about nature, they weren't just picturing like rolling hills and babbling brooks.
Right.
They were more interested in human nature.
Exactly.
And how our minds and behaviors shape the world we experience.
This focus on human nature aligns perfectly with all of the Enlightenment ideals that are spreading across Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Thinkers like John Locke were arguing that our minds are blank slates at birth.
Oh, okay.
That we learn and develop through experience.
Interesting.
And this idea had a huge impact on 18th century literature.
Yeah.
Leading writers to explore how our experiences, our education, our social interactions all shape who we become.
It's like they were trying to decode the human operating system.
Exactly.
And speaking of social interactions, we can't forget about the rise of periodicals.
Oh, yes.
Like the Tatler and the Spectator.
Yes.
These were like the early versions of magazines or blogs.
Right.
And they played a huge role in shaping public opinion.
Incredibly influential.
Oh, yeah.
Like the social media influencers of their day.
Totally.
They published essays, social commentary, gossip.
Oh, wow.
Sparking lively debates, influencing tastes and trends.
Wow.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
A real glimpse into that social and intellectual life of 18th century England.
Oh, definitely. And if you want a truly juicy glimpse into that world,
yes,
you have to check out Samuel Pepys' diary.
Yeah.
This guy was spilling the tea like centuries before gossip blogs were a thing.
Amazing.
He documented everything.
I love it.
From scandalous court intrigues to his own personal struggles.
Yes.
Giving us this incredibly vivid and often hilarious window into Restoration life.
Pepys's diary is a treasure trove.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also incredibly relatable.
Yes.
He writes about his everyday joys and frustrations, his anxieties and aspirations, reminding us that even people from centuries ago were grappling with the same human experiences that we face today.
Right. He makes history feel so human.
He does.
But as we move into the late 18th century, things start to shift.
Yes.
That perfectly ordered world of reason and satire, it begins to crack.
Well.
And a new wave of emotion and imagination starts to surge.
Yes.
It's like the calm waters of the Enlightenment are about to be hit by a romantic tsunami.
Exactly. And this shift towards romanticism wasn't just a change in literary style.
Right.
It was a complete upheaval in how people viewed the world.
Yeah.
A reaction against the strict rationality of the Enlightenment. It's like the pendulum of human thought was swinging from one extreme to the other.
So instead of those, perfectly structured heroic couplets,
yes,
we start to see an explosion of emotion, a fascination with the mysterious and the supernatural,
Right.
and a celebration of individual expression. It's like a breath of fresh air.
Yes.
A wild wind blowing through the stuffy drawing rooms of the 18th century.
And one of the key figures leading this romantic charge is William Wordsworth.
Oh, yeah.
He's often called the nature poet, but that label doesn't quite capture the depth of his vision.
Right.
For Wordsworth, nature wasn't just a pretty backdrop.
Yeah.
It was a source of profound spiritual insight, a reflection of the divine, and a powerful force that could shape our emotions and our understanding of the world.
And his autobiographical poem, The Prelude, is like a journey through his own personal and spiritual awakening.
Yes.
You can literally feel his sense of awe and wonder as he describes his encounters with nature and how these experiences shaped his imagination and led him to question, the very foundations of knowledge and reason.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's saying, hey, there's more to life than logic and reason.
Right.
We need to embrace our emotions, our intuition, and our connection to the natural world.
And what's so interesting about Wordsworth is that he's writing this at a time when the world is undergoing massive change.
Oh, yeah.
The French Revolution is happening. The Industrial Revolution is starting to take hold.
Right.
Traditional ways of life are being challenged.
Yeah.
You can see these anxieties reflected in his poetry.
Oh, wow.
This sense that the old order is crumbling and something new and uncertain is emerging.
It's like he's sensing the winds of change and trying to make sense of it all through his poetry.
Absolutely.
But Wordsworth wasn't alone in this romantic rebellion.
Oh, no, not at all.
There were a whole bunch of other poets who were also exploring these themes of emotion, imagination, and individual expression.
Figures like Kant were challenging the limitations of pure reason,
Okay.
emphasizing the importance of intuition and subjective experience.
Interesting.
And this philosophical shift had a profound impact on the arts, paving the way for the Romantic movement's celebration of emotion, imagination, and the individual's unique perspective.
It's like the whole intellectual landscape was shifting.
Yes.
And literature was right there in the thick of it,
Say what?
capturing these anxieties and aspirations.
Absolutely.
Giving voice to this new way of seeing the world.
And you can see this new way of seeing the world so clearly in the works of other Romantic giants, like Byron Shelley and Keats.
Oh, yeah.
They each, in their unique way, embodied the key tenets of Romanticism,
Right.
pushing the boundaries of what poetry could express,
Yeah.
exploring the full spectrum of human experience.
Right. Each of these poets brought something special to the table. Like Byron, with his rebellious spirit and scandalous life,
Yes.
he poured his passions into works like Don Juan,
Yes.
which is a sprawling epic poem that satirizes society and celebrates individual freedom.
Byron's work often reflects a sense of disillusionment with societal norms
Yeah.
and a yearning for something more authentic and liberating.
Right.
His heroes are often outcasts,
Yes.
challenging conventions and embracing passion and individuality.
And then there's Shelley, whose love of liberty just shines through in works like Ode to the West Wind.
Absolutely.
He saw poetry as a force for social change,
Yes.
a way to inspire people to fight for justice and equality.
Yeah.
Your poems are filled with this fiery passion, this belief in the power of the human spirit to overcome oppression.
Shelley's work embodies that romantic ideal of the poet as a visionary,
Yeah.
someone who can see beyond the limitations of the present and imagine a better future.
Right.
He believed that poetry could awaken people's consciences and inspire them to act.
And then we have Keats,
Yes.
whose poems are just dripping with beauty longing and this deep appreciation for the sensual world.
Wonderful.
He was obsessed with the fleeting nature of beauty and the power of art to capture those precious moments before they fade away.
Yes.
His work is like a sensory feast,
It is.
filled with rich imagery, evocative language, and a deep longing for something transcendent.
Keats' poetry is a testament to the power of the imagination
Yeah,
to transform the ordinary into something extraordinary.
I like that.
He believed that true beauty could be found in the most unexpected places,
Yeah.
and that art had the ability to elevate us beyond the mundane realities of everyday life.
It's like each of these poets was exploring a different facet of the romantic spirit.
Right.
The passion, the rebellion, the yearning for something beyond the ordinary. They were pushing the boundaries of language and challenging the way people thought about art, nature, and the human experience.
And as we move into the Victorian era, we'll see how these romantic ideals continue to influence British literature. But they're also tempered by a new set of social anxieties and intellectual challenges.
Right.
The world is rapidly changing,
Yeah.
and writers are grappling with the implications of industrialization, urbanization, and the growing divide between rich and poor.
Okay, bring on the Victorian era. I'm ready to see how these writers tackled the complexities of a world on the brink of massive transformation.
Get ready for a dose of social realism.
All right.
All right, so as we step into the Victorian era, you'll notice this distinct shift in the literary landscape.
Okay.
While that romantic spirit of individualism and emotional expression, it lingers, it's increasingly confronted by the harsh realities of a rapidly changing world.
Okay.
Imagine these bustling cities, factories churning out smoke.
Right.
A stark contrast between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
It's a time of social upheaval, and writers are grappling with the complexities of this new world order.
Okay, so it's like the romantic dream is colliding head-on with the realities of, industrialization and social inequality.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how Victorian writers responded to these challenges.
It is.
It's like they were holding up a mirror to society,
Yes.
exposing its flaws and searching for solutions.
Precisely. And perhaps no one embodies this spirit of social commentary better than Charles Dickens.
Oh, damn.
He's like the ultimate guide to Victorian London,
Yes.
taking us through its darkest alleys and most opulent drawing rooms,
Okay.
introducing us to a cast of characters that feels incredibly real and relatable even today.
Dickens is a master storyteller.
He is.
His novels are like these sprawling epics packed with vivid descriptions, larger-than-life characters,
Yes.
and intricate plots that keep you on the edge of your seat.
Absolutely.
But what's so brilliant about him is that he manages to entertain while also shedding light on, the social injustices of his time.
His works are like windows into the Victorian underworld, exposing the plight of the poor, the horrors of child labor, the hypocrisy of the wealthy.
Right.
Think of Oliver Twist,
Oh, yeah.
with its heart-wrenching portrayal of orphans struggling to survive on the streets of London.
Right.
It's a story that moved people to action, sparking reforms and challenging the status quo.
It's like he was using his pen as a weapon
He was.
to fight for social justice.
Yes.
And speaking of powerful voices, the Victorian era was also home to some incredible poets who grappled with the complexities of faith, doubt, and, the changing world around them.
It was.
We have giants like Tennyson and Browning, each bringing a unique perspective to the table.
Tennyson, with his exquisite lyricism,
Yeah.
captured the spirit of the age,
Okay.
reflecting both its grandeur and its anxieties.
Right.
He explored themes of lost memory and the search for meaning in a world where traditional beliefs were being challenged by science and progress.
His poems often have this melancholic beauty to them,
They do.
like he's trying to hold on to something precious that's slipping away. And then there's Browning, who's known for his dramatic monologues.
Oh, yes.
These intense psychological portraits that give voice to a wide range of characters and perspectives.
powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's like he's getting inside their heads,
Yeah.
exploring their motivations and exposing their inner conflicts.
Browning's work is fascinating because it reflects a growing interest in psychology and the complexities of human motivation.
Okay.
It's like he's anticipating the modernist writers who will come later and delve even deeper into the workings of the human mind.
It's like the Victorians were going through this collective identity crisis,
I think so.
questioning their beliefs, grappling with social change, and trying to make sense of a world that seemed to be spinning faster than ever before.
Yes.
And you see this sense of unease reflected in the rise of Victorian pessimism.
Right. Poets like Arnold and Clough were grappling with a sense of disillusionment,
Okay.
a loss of faith in traditional values, and a growing awareness of the suffering and injustice in the world.
Wow.
Think of Arnold's poem, Dover Beach, where he describes the melancholy, long withdrawing roar of the sea of faith, receding from the shores of human belief.
That's a powerful image.
It is.
It's like the old certainties were crumbling,
Yes.
and they were left wondering what to believe in.
Right.
But amidst all this doubt and anxiety,
Yeah.
we also see this incredible resilience,
We do.
this determination to create something meaningful and lasting.
Yes.
And nowhere is this more evident than in the works of the Bronte sisters.
The Bronte sisters are a force of nature.
They are.
Each of them brought a unique voice and perspective to Victorian literature,
Right.
challenging conventions and exploring themes that were often considered taboo at the time.
Oh, wow.
Their novels are still so powerful and relevant today
Yeah.
because they deal with these timeless human experiences,
Mm-hmm.
love, loss, identity, and the search for meaning in a world that often feels indifferent to our struggles.
And each sister had her own distinct style and focus, like Emily, with her breathtaking poetry and her iconic novel, Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
She explored the darker side of human passion and the destructive power of obsessive love.
It's a story that's both romantic and gothic,
Oh, yeah.
filled with intense emotions, wild landscapes, and a sense of doom that just hangs over the characters.
Emily's work is so unique because it doesn't shy away from the raw primal forces that drive human behavior.
It doesn't.
It's a stark contrast to the more restrained and socially acceptable novels of the time.
Absolutely.
And then we have Charlotte, whose Jane Eyre remains one of the most beloved novels of all time.
It's true.
It's a coming-of-age story about a young woman who overcomes adversity and societal constraints to find love and fulfillment on her own terms.
Right.
Jane is such a strong, independent character.
She is.
And her story continues to resonate with readers today because it speaks to this timeless desire for autonomy and self-discovery.
Charlotte's work often explores the complexities of female identity in a patriarchal society.
Mm.
Her heroines challenge conventional roles and expectations, seeking fulfillment beyond the confines of domesticity. And it's interesting to note that both Charlotte and Emily published their works under male pseudonyms. Testament to the challenges female authors faced at the time.
It's like they had to create these alternate identities to be taken seriously in the literary world.
They did.
And speaking of groundbreaking female authors, we can't overlook George Eliot,
No, we can't.
another writer who chose to publish under a male pen name.
Yes.
Her novels like Middlemarch are known for their psychological depth and their insightful portrayal of provincial life.
Eliot's work is incredibly rich and complex.
Yeah.
She's a master of social observation,
Yeah.
capturing the nuances of human relationships and the intricate workings of small-town life.
Right.
Her characters are so well-developed, so real and flawed that you feel like you know them personally.
Yeah.
She explores themes of ambition, morality, and the compromises we make in the pursuit of happiness.
And she does it with such intelligence and compassion.
She does.
It's like she's holding up a magnifying glass to human nature,
This.
revealing all its complexities and contradictions.
Absolutely.
And then we have Thomas Hardy, another giant of Victorian literature,
Yes.
known for his Wessex novels, which are like these epic dramas set against the backdrop of rural England.
Beautiful settings.
Yeah, his work has this tragic, almost Shakespearean quality to it,
It does.
exploring themes of fate, social injustice, and humanity's struggle against the indifferent forces of nature.
Hardy's novels often reflect a sense of pessimism.
Okay.
A belief that human beings are often caught in the grip of forces beyond their control.
Right.
His characters are often victims of circumstance,
Yeah.
struggling against social conventions, economic hardship, and the capriciousness of fate.
It's like a Greek tragedy.
It is.
But what makes his work so compelling is that even in the face of tragedy, his characters display this incredible resilience,
They do.
this stubborn determination to keep going to make the best of their lot.
It's like he's saying that even when life throws its worst at you,
Yeah.
there's still beauty to be found. There's still a reason to keep fighting.
And you can't talk about Hardy without mentioning his complicated relationship with faith.
Oh, absolutely.
He was deeply drawn to the beauty and rituals of religion,
Yes.
but he also struggled to reconcile his beliefs with the suffering and injustice he saw in the world,
Right.
especially in the face of Darwin's theory of evolution.
Hardy's work often reflects this tension between faith and doubt, this yearning for something transcendent in a world that increasingly seems governed by chance and circumstance.
It's a struggle that many people can relate to even today.
It is.
And before we leap headlong into the 20th century, we need to mention John Ruskin,
Oh, yes.
a truly influential figure who left his mark on art, architecture, social thought, and even the Indian independence movement.
Incredible.
Okay, Ruskin is a fascinating character.
He is.
He was this art critic and social reformer who believed that beauty and morality were intertwined,
Okay.
that art had the power to uplift society, and that we needed to create a world where beauty was accessible to everyone. Yeah, he was a fierce critic of industrial capitalism,
Yes.
arguing that it was dehumanizing and destructive.
Right.
And he advocated for a return to traditional craftsmanship and a more just and equitable society.
His ideas had a huge impact on the arts and crafts movement,
Oh.
which sought to revive traditional skills and create beautiful, functional objects that were affordable for ordinary people.
Interesting.
And his writings on economics and social justice influenced thinkers all over the world, including Mahatma Gandhi,
Wow.
who saw in Ruskin's vision a blueprint for a more humane and sustainable society.
It's like Ruskin was planting seeds that would blossom in unexpected ways,
He was.
inspiring people to challenge the status quo and vision a better future.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this whirlwind tour of the Victorian era, what stands out to you?
I think what's most striking about the Victorian era is this incredible tension between progress and anxiety,
Okay.
between a belief in human potential and a growing awareness of the limitations and injustices of society.
Right.
It's a time of rapid change and upheaval. Yeah.
And writers are grappling with the implications of these changes for the individual, for society, and for our understanding of the world.
It's like they were living through a time that felt both exhilarating and terrifying,
Yes.
full of possibilities and perils.
Absolutely.
And their literature reflects this complex tapestry of emotions and ideas.
It does.
So buckle up, because as we move into the 20th century, things are about to get even more experimental and mind-bending.
They are.
Wow, that Victorian era was a roller coaster of emotions and ideas. It's incredible how those writers captured the spirit of a society, going through such huge changes. But as we head into the 20th century, get ready for things to get even more experimental.
Oh, yeah. The 20th century is like this kaleidoscope of literary styles and movements.
Okay.
Each one reflecting the, tumultuous events and shifting cultural landscape of the time.
Right.
From the horrors of war to the rise of new technologies, from the, fragmentation of traditional beliefs to the exploration of the human subconscious.
Writers were pushing the boundaries of language and form, creating works that challenged and provoked, shocked and inspired.
It's like the 20th century was this giant laboratory for literary innovation.
It was.
Where writers were experimenting with new ways of seeing and expressing the world, and one of the early movements that really shook things up was imagism.
Yes.
Imagine poetry like shedding its corsets and embracing this more free-flowing minimalist style.
Imagism emerged in the early 20th century as a reaction against the overly ornate and sentimental poetry of the late Victorians.
Yep.
It was all about capturing the essence of an image or an emotion
Right.
in the most concise and evocative language possible.
Interesting.
Think of it as the Instagram of poetry.
Okay.
Sharp, focused, and designed to make an immediate impact.
I love that analogy. It really helps to visualize what they were trying to achieve. And speaking of poets who made a huge impact, we can't forget about T.S. Eliot.
Oh, yes.
The American poet who became this major force in British literature. His work is like this fascinating puzzle box, full of illusions, symbolism, and this deep exploration of the spiritual wasteland of modern life.
Eliot's arrival on the literary scene was like a seismic shift.
Yeah.
His poetry, with its fragmented structure, dense imagery, and allusions to myth and history,
Right.
it challenged traditional notions of poetic form and meaning.
Right.
He captured the fragmentation and disillusionment of that post-World War I era,
Okay.
exploring themes of alienation, despair, and the search for meaning in a world that seemed to have lost its spiritual moorings.
Right.
One of his most influential works, The Wasteland, is like a journey through the barren landscape of modern consciousness,
Interesting.
a meditation on the loss of faith, the breakdown of communication, and the yearning for spiritual renewal.
It's a challenging poem, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
It is.
It makes you think, it makes you feel, and it stays with you long after you finish reading it.
Yeah.
But while Eliot was exploring these complex themes of modernity and spirituality, another poet, Siegfried Sassoon, was using his words as weapons against the horrors of war.
Absolutely. His poems, born out of his experiences in the trenches of World War I,
Right.
are like these raw, visceral cries of pain and anger,
Yeah.
exposing the brutality and futility of conflict.
Sassoon's poetry is a powerful indictment of the way war dehumanizes individuals and destroys lives.
It is.
He doesn't shy away from the graphic details, the blood and mud and suffering,
Right.
forcing readers to confront the true cost of conflict. His work is a testament to the power of poetry, to bear witness, to speak truth to power, and to challenge the propaganda that often surrounds war.
Absolutely.
It's like he's saying, this is what war really looks like. This is what it does to people. And his poems had a profound impact on the way people viewed war, helping to fuel the anti-war movement that emerged after World War I. But the 20th century wasn't all doom and gloom. We also see this incredible surge of creativity and experimentation in all forms of literature.
Oh, yeah.
From poetry and drama to the novel.
Absolutely. The early 20th century saw the rise of modernism, a movement that challenged traditional forms and conventions, embracing new ways of representing reality and exploring the complexities of human consciousness.
Okay, so it's like a total break from the past, a rejection of those old Victorian certainties.
It is.
And you see this in the way novelists were experimenting with stream of consciousness, multiple perspectives, and these fragmented, non-linear narratives.
Yes.
It's like they were trying to mirror the way our minds work with all these thoughts and memories and impressions colliding and overlapping.
And one of the pioneers of this modernist style was Virginia Woolf.
Oh, whoa.
Her novels, like To the Lighthouse and Mrs. Dalloway, are like these intricate tapestries woven from the inner lives of her characters.
Yeah.
She uses stream of consciousness to capture the fluidity of thought, the way our minds jump from past to present, from observation to memory, creating this incredibly rich and immersive reading experience.
Right.
It's like you're right there inside their heads, experiencing the world through their senses and emotions.
Woolf's writing is so beautiful, so evocative, and it really challenges you as a reader to piece together the puzzle of her narratives. And speaking of challenging, we can't forget about James Joyce.
Oh, Joyce is one of those writers who either you love him or you hate him.
Yes.
There's no in between.
Right.
Ulysses, which follows the wanderings of Leopold Bloom through Dublin on a single day, is considered one of the most important and influential novels of the 20th century.
Okay.
But it's also one of the most difficult to read.
Really?
It's packed with allusions, puns, neologisms, and this incredible density of language that can feel overwhelming at times.
It's like he's trying to cram the entirety of human experience into a single day.
He is.
But what's so brilliant about Joyce is that even though his work is challenging, it's also incredibly rewarding. He makes you work for it, but the payoff is this incredible sense of discovery, this feeling of having experienced something truly unique and transformative.
He's a master of language.
Yeah.
And he uses it to create these incredibly vivid and memorable characters, to explore the complexities of human consciousness, and to challenge our assumptions about what a novel can be.
And while Woolf and Joyce were pushing the boundaries of modernism, other novelists were exploring different facets of the 20th century experience. D.H. Lawrence, for example, was fascinated by the power of primal instincts, the complexities of human relationships, and the clash between individual desire and societal norms. His novels like Sons and Lovers and Lady Chatterley's Lover were considered quite scandalous at the time.
They were.
Because of their frank depictions of sexuality and their challenges to conventional morality.
Lawrence was a controversial figure,
Yeah.
but he was also a brilliant writer who wasn't afraid to explore the darker sides of human nature.
Right.
He saw the modern world as repressive and life-denying, and he sought to celebrate the vitality and sensuality of the natural world and the power of human passion.
And he wasn't alone in his critique of modern society. Aldous Huxley's dystopian masterpiece, Brave New World, paints a chilling picture of a future where technology and social engineering have created this seemingly perfect society, but at the cost of individual freedom and authentic human experience. It's like he's warning us about the dangers of giving up our individuality and our critical thinking abilities in exchange for comfort and security.
Brave New World is one of those novels that feels more relevant than ever today.
Totally.
We're living in a world where technology is advancing at an incredible pace, and Huxley's warnings about the potential for social control and the manipulation of human desires seem eerily prescient.
It's like he saw the future. And speaking of seeing the future, we can't forget about George Orwell, whose political satires, Animal Farm and 1984, have become part of our cultural lexicon, warning us about the dangers of totalitarianism propaganda and the erosion of individual liberties.
Orwell was a master of social commentary,
Yeah.
using allegory and satire to expose the hypocrisies and abuses of power. His works are a reminder of the importance of critical thinking, of questioning authority, and of fighting for freedom of thought and expression. And it's amazing how his terms and concepts like Big Brother and doublethink have become part of our everyday language,
Yeah.
reminding us to be vigilant against the forces that seek to control our minds and our lives.
It's like he gave us a vocabulary for understanding the threats to democracy and individual freedom. And while Orwell was warning us about the dangers of totalitarianism, William Golding, in his chilling novel Lord of the Flies, explored the darker side of human nature, the potential for savagery that lurks beneath the veneer of civilization.
Lord of the Flies is like a social experiment gone wrong.
Yeah.
A cautionary tale about what happens when the rules of society break down and human beings are left to their own devices.
Right.
It's a reminder of the fragility of civilization and the importance of reason, compassion, and the rule of law in keeping our baser instincts in check.
It's a disturbing book, but it's also incredibly thought-provoking.
Right.
It makes you question what it means to be human, what separates us from animals, and what forces are at play in shaping our behavior. And as we move towards the end of our whirlwind tour of 20th century British literature, we need to acknowledge the incredible diversity of voices and perspectives that emerged during this period.
Absolutely. The 20th century saw the rise of new voices from the margins writers who challenged the traditional canon and expanded our understanding of British identity, and experienced writers like E.M. Forster with his nuanced explorations of social class and cultural difference in novels like A Passage to India, and Howard's End Graham Greene with his morally complex thrillers that explored themes of faith, guilt, and redemption, and Evelyn Waugh with his satirical wit and his sharp observations of the British upper classes in novels like Brideshead Revisited.
So the British literary landscape was becoming more inclusive, more reflective of the diversity of the nation and the world. And this trend continued into the latter part of the 20th century and beyond, with the rise of post-colonial writers like Salman Rushdie, Kazuo Ishiguro, and Zadie Smith, who brought new perspectives, new stories, and new ways of using language to British literature.
These writers challenged the traditional Eurocentric perspective, exploring themes of identity, belonging, and the legacy of colonialism. Their work has enriched and expanded our understanding of British literature, making it more global, more diverse, and more representative of the complexities of the modern world.
So as we wrap up this whirlwind tour of British literary history, what stands out to you? What are some of the key takeaways from this incredible journey through centuries of words and ideas?
I think what's most remarkable about British literature is its ability to adapt and evolve to reflect the changing times and the shifting cultural landscape, from the witty satire of the 18th century to the experimental modernism of the 20th century. And beyond, writers have constantly pushed the boundaries of language and form, exploring the full spectrum of human experience with intelligence, wit, and compassion.
It's like this incredible tapestry woven from threads of humor and heartbreak, social commentary and philosophical exploration, romantic yearning and dystopian visions. And it's a tapestry that continues to grow and evolve with new voices and new stories, adding to its richness and complexity. So, dear listener, out of all these authors and works, which one sparked your curiosity the most? Which one would you like to explore further? Maybe you're intrigued by Pepys's scandalous diary or want to lose yourself in the lyrical beauty of Keats' poetry. Perhaps you're ready to tackle the challenge of Ulysses or dive into the dystopian world of Brave New World.
Whatever your literary leanings, we encourage you to keep exploring, to keep discovering, and to keep sharing your love of literature with others. Who knows what treasures you might find along the way.
It's like this never-ending adventure, a journey through time and imagination, guided by the words of these brilliant writers. So keep reading, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. We'll see you on our next deep dive.